and change across their life course. Thank you, everyone. That's the end, and I'll hand back to Tim.
Fiona, thank you very much. Having heard from Matt about a lot of global trends and drivers, and Stephen earlier about some of the national picture, to get the chance to hear about some of the Plymouth-specific challenges and opportunities, as Fiona's described them, is really helpful. So Fiona, I think you can see me. Thank you for that. If there are specific questions for Fiona arising from her presentation, please put them on the Last Words, Lost Words board, which is just around the corner here, or online. Please put them into the chat, and she can incorporate those into the final bits of research and presentation that will be made available at some point at some point after the event. Okay, Fiona, thank you, and goodbye. Okay. Right, we've asked you all to do a lot of absorbing and listening and thinking already today. We're aware of that. What we really wanted to do before the event ends is give you a chance to make sense of and discuss some of that information, but also there's a call to action session right at the end of this next discussion, where we're hoping to initiate conversations on next steps, new approaches, some of the support needed as well. So this next session, which is a facilitated discussion on tables and in online groups, those are the two key objectives: to give you a chance to actually discuss with some of the people around you, make sense of and digest some of those big emerging and current pressures and opportunities, but also to initiate conversations on next steps. So it's a 30-minute facilitated discussion. There will be 10 minutes feedback afterwards, and that will lead into that final call to action next steps session. The tables should each have a facilitator on them. Can I ask you to raise your hand now, just to make sure? Oh yeah, there we go. So that's your table facilitator. Online groups, you'll be put into your breakout groups in a moment. The facilitators are there to facilitate the discussion. They're very experienced, and also to provide 30 seconds, that's their challenge for the day, 30 seconds feedback at the end from each table, from each online group. We would really like you to take some notes of your discussion. Ideally not the facilitator, but work it out on your table. The reason for that is because we want to take away the notes, we want to take away the online comments, we want to take away the last words, lost words, and inform the articulation of next steps using all of the discussions and the contributions that you have for today. We won't have time to feed it all back, but we will be taking it away, and it's really important for you to recognise that that's what's going to happen. Okay, there are 3 questions we'd like you to focus on for the next 25 to 30 minutes. If you could put the questions up, thank you. So the general topic, the sort of common thread that's gone through today, implicitly or explicitly, is ensuring our approaches to recruiting, to retaining people, enable Plymouth to prosper in 2040. So that's the sort of general thread and the broad topic. The 3 questions are fairly simple. The first one's a nice and open one, because we don't know. You've listened to Matt's big global scenarios, Stephen's national picture, all of those stats now from Fiona about Plymouth. So the first question really is an open one to you. Of all of that today, what's struck you most? It might be a statistic, it might be a particular pressure, it might be some of the global trends and drivers. What struck you most today? Secondly, in order to achieve that overall aim of ensuring our approaches help to make Plymouth prosper in 2040, what radical new approaches and conversations are needed? Some of those may be system-wide. For argument's sake, it might be childcare, something which is system-wide, or they may be very sector or organisation specific. And that's for you on your table to decide what you'd want to focus on and what you want to feed back to the Inclusive Growth Board and the city at the end. Finally, to deliver some of that stuff, what additional support would you or your workforce need in order to be able to deliver that? to inform next steps. Hopefully all of that's fairly clear and simple. Your facilitators are going to do all of the hard work. Online attendees, you'll now be allocated into your breakout groups. I'll give everyone a 2-minute warning, and we'll see you again for some feedback in 25 to 30 minutes' time. Thank you. Okay. Okay, if I can ask for discussions to come to a close. Thank you very much. Right. We don't have time to hear feedback on everything you've spoken about on every table. It's just not viable in the time we've got. So I've asked the facilitators, one on each table, just to give, in 30 seconds or less, just one critical burning point that the table was particularly focused on and that you'd like the online audience and the rest of the room to hear. So we're going to start, there's a roving mic, so please wait till you've got it. We're going to start with the table at the back, and we're going to do about 30 seconds per each table, just to hear what people were talking about.
I talk very quickly. Okay, question one. We were really taken by the local analysis. So employers and businesses need to understand the local talent pool that they're fishing in and where the opportunities are. So that's mega important, whilst the mega trends were really interesting and thought-provoking. And then in order to actually make some interesting interventions, we need to unlock the skills journey and the interventions and make them much simpler and help our talent pool understand where the opportunities and career pathways are, what your first step is and what the career in a particular industry or sector looks like. That was it, thank you. It's about 30 seconds.
Yeah, I think so, I'm not timing it. Thank you. Next table.
Yeah, came around really quickly. We were sort of taken by the amount of initiatives in skills and training that probably didn't go very well. So we were interested in the idea of some sort of flexible non-initiative for businesses and people. So something that will able to provide support and development, and I'm using those words quite broadly, not just training, for businesses and people to get into work, into companies, into business, into organisations. Support and development, again, I'm not using that word training, to help people when they're in those workplaces, either that could be around training, but that could be around flexible and supporting needs, particularly like that. And then support for those other employers and organisations to be able to work and support other businesses to grow and work together and develop like that. So yes, a non-initiative, universal non-initiative initiative.
Thank you, Ed. Back when I was in government, we used to call it initiativitis, if it was the government's seemingly endless desire to create new initiatives. Okay, thank you.
So we sort of had one main focus actually, which is on our conversations. And actually what struck us most today was perhaps something that was not talked about as much as we thought could have been talked about, and that was the environment. So we were saying that actually, it's a major pressure in the fact that the Green Guardian scenario isn't as far-fetched as, you'd actually think. And that, at the end of the day, if we don't have a natural environment, it's all great talking about jobs and education and things, but if there isn't an environment to protect, then there's no jobs to actually be had. So we were talking about the fact that, the environment is probably the biggest major pressure that we've seen, but also at the same time is a real opportunity for Plymouth. So we were talking about the fact that, wouldn't it be great with all these great things that are happening with the Three-Port and, some of the initiatives that people are doing already, that actually Plymouth could become, a green city, be known as the green city of the UK. And we thought that that was really, something that we could really drive forward. And in terms of sort of bringing that to life, we felt that there needed to be more sort of aligned and joined up thinking across the city. So we all know that in our areas we are doing it, but actually having again a bit more of a city-wide approach. And in our table we've got sort of two members of Building Plymouth, and we said actually wouldn't there be something, if we could do something similar but with a green agenda, then actually that would be brilliant in order to actually co-design things but also bring about real action and change, because we said that sometimes we feel that actually it can be seen as a bit of a tick box still, the environment, and actually we need to get the people who really want to drive it forward. And the key thing that the table felt was sort of needed was more education, but all levels, so that right from the children, really wanting to invest in the environment, but also existing businesses seeing how actually it's not just about that they have a green education because they can win a contract. It's about actually what does it really mean for that business and how actually it can make a better Plymouth.
Okay, thank you. That's a really important point, and Lindsay and Anna can speak about it more than I can, but the Resurgam Charter is, and all of the work around it is about a greener and fairer Plymouth. We chose to focus specifically on the fairer bit today, but it's absolutely front and centre. I'd agree, so thank you for that. Next table.
Yeah, we had quite a big table, didn't we? We want to solve education and skills, a role model for Plymouth who strongly advocates skills and has a strong budget to approach and inspire schools and colleges, all the way through to those people who already can change jobs and change direction and so forth, and make it attractive to have a career in Plymouth.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda.
Thanks, Amanda.
We spoke about the stats that we heard today, and I think those were quite stark. And I think the one that we focused on the most was the kind of gender differences in the stats, and how the city needs to find a different way to tackle the issues that are in that. And obviously the issues are many and complex, but we need to find a way of really investigating that and supporting businesses to be more flexible and hopefully close those gaps.
Yeah, no, thank you. There were a number of stark stats, but the gender pay differentials were and work differentials were incredible. No, thank you.
Okay, so we were very struck by the local stats and particularly wondered whether whether there was a correlation between lots of young people going into low-skilled, perhaps physical, perhaps more male-oriented jobs traditionally, and then the fact that later on they caused ill health and disability. And so, is there something here about a sort of life cycle that leads to where we are at the moment? So that led us into the fact that what was really needed was a major culture change, where we actually thought about how could we find smarter, more interesting ways of doing some of those jobs that were potentially less physical, but, and this was probably the most important thing, that those solutions need to be co-created between the workforce, because we had a long discussion about if individuals, employees only think there is benefits to them doing training for their employer, that's not much of an incentive. If for the employer, actually, they train somebody and they leave, that's not much of an incentive. And perhaps we all need to think about something which better balances value for employer, for employee, and for Plymouth. And then we had a very radical solution, which was Mark's, which was that what we should do is that all the money that currently is used for the apprenticeship levy should not be controlled by the government anymore and should be put into a Plymouth pot, which can be used without all the enormous regulations around apprenticeships in order to create, the type of flexible, co-created solutions that we think are needed.
True localism. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I've just finished a mid-career PhD which partly traces the history and the evolution of the Plymouth economy over the last 500 years, and it's amazing how its early strengths have locked the city often into a trajectory of decline because some of those sectors have become smaller over time. So you'll talk about the life cycle and the industrial structure is a really interesting one. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so we spoke about the obvious gap between people who want to work and employers who are saying they can't find anyone to work, and people with in this city with low skill base. So clearly we've got to help that, partly through I would say this because we're going to chair it, the local skills improvement plan that puts employers' voice front and centre, because there's no point churning out people with qualifications that people don't need. There was a very sort of interesting discussion about are schools, institutions to send people out into the world with academic qualifications, or are they there to prepare people for work? We just wanted to bridge that gap between the employers and the potential employees, even starting them young, exposing young people to the potential for work, the sort of jobs that are out there, the exciting opportunities, how we do that in short, sharp bites. And simple couple of things. We talked about the blue-green economy. We think that's a massive plus. Autonomy, marine autonomy is huge, and it speaks to all the things that young people like. Gaming, AI, robotics, all that sort of stuff. So that's very exciting. We did talk about this point about how employers can invest and not lose out. Well, one thing that I'm pushing for through British Chambers of Commerce is to get the annual investment allowance, which is usually for facilities and things, extended to cover skills. We did talk about as well, and I'll shut up in a minute, I promise, about sponsored training academies. So in much the same way like the RAF will send you off to university as long as you promise to do 2 or 3 years in the RAF at the end of it. Well, same. We'll send you through a course, but you've got to promise to work for a bit at the end of it. And there was an interesting question about measuring schools by the employment data at the end of their alumni rather than their qualifications. How many people in a year or two were in employment. But we appreciate that's difficult because that can naturally discriminate against people who are from a difficult area or go to a bad school.
Absolutely, yep. No, absolutely right. Thank you. And your opening point really articulately explains why inclusive growth is actually the same as economic growth. I mean, you can't have real growth without inclusive growth. Okay, this table.
Thank you. We had an interesting and probably could be controversial discussion around the fact that actually inclusive growth is not just about skills, it's actually about the societal and cultural influences on inclusive growth. So, for example, at the one end, we were talking about, where is the work ethic? Where's the work ethic gone? And it's quite interesting to see young people having opportunities and influences on them with regards to job opportunities, digital job opportunities. I mean, the point was made, why would someone put themselves through a 3-year course to do a job that was 40 hours a week to pay for, paid such amount of money when actually they could be an influencer, or they could actually have an OnlyFans page and earn a fortune. So there are all these different pressures and opportunities and expectations that has an impact on the workforce and inclusive growth. And then at the other end of the scale, we were talking about how COVID, the pandemic, has actually change people's views to work-life balance. And that figure about, over 1 million people have not returned to the workforce. People have readjusted their lives, actually made that work-life balance, maybe not returned to work, maybe actually, started something else. So that's actually had a big impact on the workforce within the last couple of years. And we also spoke about career progression. We noticed in the local stats that after the age of 24, Plymouth was quite low in the stats. And is that because the career progression isn't here in Plymouth and people leave Plymouth to actually get those job opportunities? And we also spoke about the startling people on long-term sick within Plymouth. And an interesting comment was made that from someone on the table who'd worked in various areas across the country, that they had never really seen it so prevalent in Plymouth in terms of the number of people on long-term sick. And we had a conversation whether is that linked to the fact that Plymouth as a city, the largest employers in the city are in the public sector, in the service sector, the military sector, education sector, who have traditionally had favourable long-term sick policies. I don't know, but that was a controversial conversation that we had. So in a nutshell, we were saying that in terms of inclusive growth, it's multifaceted. It's wider than just skills and education. It's actually societal and cultural, which will take years.
Yep, absolutely. No, thank you. I opened an OnlyFans page and lost money, so it must be. Thank you.
Hi. Inevitably, by the time you get to the nearly last table, we're probably going to reflect a lot of the views that other people have shared. We kind of reflected on essentially the missing 1 million as well, and those health conditions, and maybe the group of people in their 50s who have decided not to return into the workforce. But we kind of linked it to the adult retraining and the fact that it's almost impossible financially if you want to shift careers at that point, which was talked about earlier. But then also startups. Actually, where is the opportunity? Because again, a startling figure for us was how few self-employed people there are within the city comparatively to other cities and the Southwest in general. So the focus for us was actually how do we create opportunities and knowledge that people know where to go to find out this information. And that led us, again, to a societal issue, which is where are the role models? You know, we know we've got parts of this city where aspiration is not something that's understood, and where you've got third and fourth generation of families who've been unemployed, then they don't understand where to go to even find out where the alternatives are. And where we've got an education system where the careers options and the careers discussions are still so blinkered compared to actually what's out there in reality. I mean, I don't expect them to talk about the OnlyFans page necessarily, but but they're not but those. We haven't linked the two things. We haven't linked real opportunity to what we're explaining. But we also talked about keeping talent locally, because we can be really parochial as employers, and we can say, actually, we don't want to train this person so well they might leave us. But actually, if we talk about keeping them in our community, and that, you know, going back to Jonathan's point, and they're not going off to Bristol or they're not going off to other parts of the country because they want to stay here, because actually we are starting to share that talent and we're being really open about it. I think that's something that we could consider. And being just really well aware that financial restrictions upon families are influential on their decision making.
Yeah. Okay. No, thank you. Last table.
Hello. Bijou and compact, but we have plenty to say. I think everyone has spoken so many wonderful things, but I think the thing we mainly focused on is how do we attract and inspire. We know what the workforce will be looking for in the future, so we know about the 50-plus age group, the ageing population, people with health conditions, but how do we know what people need? What do people want? And it's connecting with the people in our communities to say, what do you want from your workforce in the future? Not just moving into work, but what would you like to stay into work? We noticed also that there's a lot of people on level 2 looking, how do we inspire people to progress above level 2? What do they want from that? What do they need? What they'd like to see? There's a lot of provision out there, but it's not taken up. So evidently that provision needs to be adapted.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. I think we've got some online. Ellie, could you pop it over? I'm just going to read out some of the feedback from online. It's the first time I've seen this, but I'll do my best. Okay. Great, thank you. So online, we've had some online groups. We need to challenge gender bias in roles to encourage more into roles. Support new businesses past startup stage, but where to go? It's an incredible opportunity now to make braver choices and more radical and positive changes. We need to create transparent changes that are accessible to all whilst supporting those that need it. There's no way I'm going to try to make sense of that in front of you all in a matter of seconds, but that will go back into the thinking that comes out next. Look, thank you very much for that. We need to make sure we collect each and all of your notes from your tables. I just want to reiterate that all of the discussions today will be used to inform next steps, the call to action that we're going to move on to in a minute. And just picking up some of Lindsay's words from earlier, this is about a new phase. It's about mobilising a new phase of work and action around inclusive growth. So a lot of the fundamentals have been worked on since 2016, and this is really now a new phase and a new series of bits of inclusive growth. Do you want the 2 minutes now with the post-it notes, or would you like to come right back on? Okay. Fine. I will hand right over to Alexis.
Thank you. Thank you for doing the post-it notes whilst I chat away. We're trying to keep on time, so in the last phases of it now. The time has come, of course, to say thank you to all of you in the room. To those of you who are in the 10% and happy to share best practice, to those of you who are committed to collaborative, cooperative change in our community, and to those of you ambitious to make 2040 look radically different, and those of you who believe, as we do, that Plymouth can pilot something innovative, radical and groundbreaking that can change our lives permanently and irreversibly for the better and influence national policy if we work together. As I said, we rise by lifting others. And if we are to make these changes, we need perseverance, dogged determination, teamwork, and a goal. As Stephen said, the one thing we know about any projection is that it will be wrong, but it will be a start, and it will have an aim. And this, here, today, is where we start. Matthew said, we can't tell what the future will hold, but we do know that history is not made in retrospect, but in the small incremental steps that we take right now, in hope and aspiration every single day, and that teams work, and that big teams work even better. Plymouth is an incredible city of pioneers and pilgrims and people who take risks. It has a history of innovation and determination and success, mostly by working together. The history of Britain's ocean city shows that a rising tide floats all boats. And look at the fleet you were in. Our closing comments today must, of course, not come from me. They must go to Lindsay and Anna. So the two of you, if you'll come back up here quick. These lovely seats will welcome you, and we'd be very grateful. We'd just like your very quick reflections on this afternoon and your takeaways. First of all, though, Lindsay, I must, of course, ask you that one vital question. Surprise! How do we make Plymouth better for Plymouth women in life chances, employment, safety, and respect?
30 seconds? You mean I've got a whole 30 seconds to answer that?
Hurry up.
Well, I suppose a couple of things. We have a lot of fantastic women role models in this room, so we need to actually all get out there a bit more, and we need to champion it. But I do also think that we do really need to build on that sort of culture change, which says, come on, women, we can all do it together. So we need to make sure that we really do get out there. But I have taken it away as one of my real big to-dos for the Inclusive Growth Group, is that we actually need to think about where we're going to put focus, and definitely the gender imbalance is one of them. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'm glad you said all of that. I was just reflecting actually on what was said earlier about lack of role models, and that whole concept of it's hard to be what you can't see.
But loads of amazing women here.
I like the percentage here is
city.
absolutely awesome.
Yeah.
So if I could just have feedback from both of you. Anna, would you like to start?
Okay. I've come up with a load of notes because I've taken so many all day. Really pleased that that statistics presentation from Fiona went down so well, because we kind of bombarded you with statistics with that. And behind it is a statistical pack and more information about the scenarios that they've done for us. And our intention is to follow up today with some focus group events so that we can take forward the ideas and the thinking, and hopefully some of the things that we've kind of provoked in you to think differently about. So there are 3 focus groups that are planned, and they are on the website that the QR code takes you to. The first is an employer hub that we're running with the Skills Launchpad. And Francis Brennan, who's at the back there waving at us, thanks Francis, is going to work with us to develop the employer hub. So that focus group is all about how do we get together as employers with the colleges, with the community organisations who reach out to make sure we are getting that upskilling happening within our workforce. One of the things that we really want to do as part of launching the Employer Hub is that video that hopefully you have all seen next door, we put it together as a way for you to kind of attach to something in your recruitment packs to say Plymouth's a great place to build a career, to build a business. So please let us have your feedback on the video. We will polish it, we will consult on it, we will update it over the next year, and hopefully it will be something that you will all enjoy putting out to potential employees to attract people to Plymouth. Two other groups that we've got focus groups about, an ambassadors group, which is going to be a network of people who can advocate for inclusive growth. So that's people who are kind of, networked online, in person, in business groups, in community organisations, get together with us and tell us about how we can support you as individuals to advocate for inclusive growth. And the third one is a network of business champions. So those businesses who are kind of doing this really well, who can be role models for other businesses. So those of you that we can come to and say, have you got a comms manager that we can kind of put in front of people, or an HR manager, or if you're a very small business, how do you kind of manage inclusivity with a very small team, making sure that you're wearing lots of hats if there's only one or two of you. So we're interested in hearing from all sorts of sizes of businesses, sectors, and we'll provide opportunities for you to feed case studies, and we'll get those amplified and out to other businesses to try and expand the network. And all of this is going to happen through the Sydenham Charter that Lindsay and Tim and others have mentioned. We're going to do a relaunch of that and really expand the network. So, what we've come away from today with is some opportunities for focus groups. What goes into those focus groups and comes out the other side really depends on you. We've had some great feedback from you today. I just hope that it continues.
Good. Lindsay.
Yeah, so thank you. I think thank you for all of your input, and for, I suppose, the inspiration for the next bit. I think some of us, we've spent quite a long time getting the charter there, so I'm sure no one in this room has not done it, but if you haven't, please do sign the charter. It's really important that we make sure we continue that sort of sense of this is the whole of the city that is moving together around the inclusive growth agenda. I suppose the things that I've taken from it that I was really struck by was Fiona's challenge about could Plymouth be the first high value and high flexibility city, and I thought that was a really interesting way of thinking about things, which encompassed that notion of I suppose the culture change that we've been talking about, the notion of smarter and different ways of working, different gender balance and diversity. So I'm definitely going to take away back to the inclusive growth group. Okay, so what might we do to start doing that? Because I think what we're dealing with in terms of this agenda is very much, it is practical things, but it is also hearts and minds and belief and culture shift. And that's something which all of us have a huge role to play in. As I think we said earlier, we have lots and lots of really positive role models in this room, and we don't capitalise on it enough. So that's something I've also taken away, is how are we going to actually just talk about all of the interesting and diverse people who are already doing amazing things? Because I just think that actually for most young people, and probably a lot of older people, they just have no idea actually what's possible or that it could be them. So that's something we really need to do something about. I thought the scenario planning thing was really interesting and challenging, but actually something as a city we do need to do. Some of it is not that far away, and you could see elements of it. So thinking about how we could do that, but from that take some really positive and dynamic actions. Because I suppose at the end of the day, it's an old adage, isn't it? If we just keep doing what we've always done, nothing is going to change. And I'm sure none of us are here because we want that to be true. So it is down to all of us now to keep moving, keep doing the next bit, be bold, and move forward, which I'm hugely confident we can do. So let's do it.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much, Lindsay. Thank you, Anna. So we're very nearly on time, and it's left to me basically to do the big thank yous. Thank you to our speakers, Lindsay, councillors Mark Sher, Pat Patel, Stephen Evans, our keynote speaker, Matthew Finch, Fiona Tuck, Tim Sydenham, and the Inclusive Group of Plymouth Growth Board and the Inclusive Economy team of the Council through the Interfunded Seeker project. Where is it? Interreg. There we go. But most importantly, really, we need to thank you. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much for your input. Thank you very much for brainstorming basically this afternoon. We are now going to ask you to do one more little bit of homework, please. We're going to do a quick final poll to end this event. So grab your clickers at home. You know what to do. So we would like to know how much more your organisation can do to plan for the global, national and local pressures that impact on the recruitment and retention of people in Plymouth. Go for your lives. For those of you joining us online, hi, this should appear somewhere on your screen, and you guys have got your clickers. So as you get on with that, can I just subliminally remind you, don't forget to hand in your badges, please. But also, I would like to leave you, finally, this afternoon, with the words of our keynote speaker, Stephen Evans, as he sneaked past me to go home earlier. It echoes what you said, Lindsay, and what we all know. He said simply, crack on. So, crack on, Plymouth. Crack on. Thank you.